you go into the start of the Rugby Championship missing quite a few senior All Blacks. How much of a challenge is it for the rest of the group to have to stand up and to try and tackle, I suppose, a team like, the Springboks, who you haven't faced for a while, without guys like Whitelock, Moanga, Smith, etc.?
I know there's a lot of talk about the Springboks, but, for us, we've got the Wallabies in Perth, and we've got 2 tests against Argentina before that. And like I said, there's a few unknowns here about when those guys can come and what the Queensland quarantine is, whether it's still going to be 2 hard weeks. But so I'm not too worried about that, about the South African League. Right now we're about to go into the Rugby Championship proper, and clearly we would prefer to have all our experienced players on deck. But like I said, this is a chance, probably a tour like no other. It's a chance for us to grow a bit of depth by necessity.
You haven't named a captain, or certainly not in that media release that's gone out. Do you have a captain that you've settled on yet?
Yeah, we have. To be honest, we're pretty clear, but we really didn't. On the last couple of days, as we got certainty of the squad and who was coming and all the family situations, we decided to leave our leaders to have a couple of days of grace and just to enjoy being at home. They've done a fantastic job behind the scenes, getting the squad ready to go, and we've got plenty of time now with the Sunday Test match. When we get over there, we've got 3 or 4 days to really acclimatise, get used to contact, and part of that process tomorrow is going to be to sit down with our leadership group and just sort through the structure we're going to operate in the short term. So we'll let you guys know as soon as we can.
Ian, just with that group and leaving those guys behind, can you just talk through those decisions? It's obviously would have been hard to juggle different wants and needs in terms of staying behind and obviously wanting to come and play for the All Blacks. So I guess difficult decisions in some regards for some players.
Difficult from the sense that there's no one who's not coming on this trip who's sort of opted out for any other reason than, in Colesey's case, it's injury, and Sammy Whitelock and Nuggie and Richie, it's babies. And so, we're just massively supportive of the decisions they've made for their families. I know the team's 100% behind them, and I know they're willing and committed to do whatever they can in the meantime behind the scenes to help the team prepare. And I know they're very keen to jump on a plane as soon as they can. So, but again, it's been difficult saying goodbye to them. But the reality is that that's what we have to do in these times. And the fact that what would normally mean people would miss maybe 1 test and now they might miss 3 or 4 is, I guess, it just complicated the whole issue. But the actual solution is pretty simple.
And just in terms of getting to Australia, do you think you're walking into a bit of a hostile environment somewhat, given the fallout that's happened over the last week or so?
Yeah, I don't think they'll fall in love with us straight away. But, the goal, we were going to be in Australia for quite a time. Look, we're really, really satisfied with the decisions that have been made administratively. And, the fact is that now we know with certainty that us, South Africa and Argentina are all turning up in Australia. So we know there is going to be a Rugby Championship, and that's given us real confidence. So, there might be a little bit of explaining to do in some ways, but, ultimately we can't control that. And, we're really confident in the decisions that have been made on our side of the Tasman. And from all signs, as I think common sense has prevailed, and hopefully we'll resort to the normal level of hostility that you normally get between a Wallabies and an All Black game.
Ian Elliott from News Talk ZB, can you just talk to the reasons behind Shannon Frizzell not being in the squad, please?
Yeah, it's related to his visa access into Australia, which clearly he's got still aspects to work through regarding his court case, which we're really confident he will. But in the meantime, he's got some things to do with that before he can come over.
And you've only taken 1 first 5 in the squad. Geordie's obviously started there before. David Havili's played for the Crusaders. Do you have a designated backup or someone like Damien?
We've always said Damien's our third 10, so we've definitely taken 2 10s. And then we've, when we look at it, we're hopeful that Richie can get over sooner than later. And so in the meantime, it's one of those strong dilemmas, guys, where do you bring over someone else and And once they come on the plane, they're with us for 15 weeks without maybe a lot of likelihood of getting a lot of rugby. So we've elected to go with the decision we've got. We've got Bodie, Damien. Yes, we can use Davey and Geordie short term, but if Richie's not going to come over for a long period, then clearly we'll probably have to change that decision. But short term, we're satisfied.
Just on the situation of the tournament being moved to Queensland, was that the next best option from your point of view, or would you have preferred to have gone to Europe as was being floated?
Clearly, a couple of good options. I think it's right. It's in Queensland. It was going to be in New Zealand. Let's not forget. And we were going to have a whole lot of home games, and when things changed, it had to be in Australia. And they did a good job getting that organised, and it wasn't their fault that the quarantine rules changed for bringing South Africa and Argentina in. So, reality is, while there's a lot of tension last week, that they've worked hard to get the tournament into Australia, and the fact it's in Queensland, I think is going to be really, really positive. Equally, it wouldn't have upset us if we had to go to Europe. It's we're going to have to go there anyway later in the year. So both options made a lot of sense, but I really believe, I think Australia deserved the first opportunity to pull it off, and they've done that.
Just, you mentioned the captain situation and the leadership group. I guess there's been a lot made of the leadership group over the past couple of years. So how important is a captain for you these days? I
think it's really important, because I think, they become the figurehead for the leadership group and the spokesperson, but also there's a lot of on-field situations that, they've got to sort of reflect, I guess, the calmness of our team to the decisions that we make. So, look, it's been an eventful 12 months with captains, isn't it? Obviously, clearly Sam Cane initially, and then his injury, and then Sam Whitelock's come in, and, he's done a fantastic job. And so with him not being there, we've also had Aaron Smith this year when Sammy wasn't playing early in the year, and Aaron's not there. So it has, I guess, tested our depth in that regard. But I think it's also given, we've got a lot of confidence in our leadership plan. The work done by Gilbert with our leaders, and that program's been outstanding the last 12 months. And so, we know who we want. We just wanted to get over to Perth and I guess create some energy by having those conversations once we're over there.
And you mentioned Sam Cane. I know the initial prognosis was maybe mid to late September. Is that still generally what you're eyeing up? And would he maybe look to come over the same time as the Sam Whitelocks, the Richie Mo'ungas, Aaron Smith?
Yeah, it's getting that balance. Like, his time frame's still that. But the ideal thing is that we were playing in New Zealand, and we could have brought him back through NPC and the Steamers. Now with the uncertainty of when NPC is going to start, and with quarantining into Queensland, we'll have to make those decisions. Unfortunately, we can't really crystal ball gaze at everything, and so we'll probably make those decisions in 2 or 3 weeks. But it's a little bit like Joe Moody and Offa coming on this flight. We would have preferred they stayed and played NPC the next 2 weeks and then come over. But the fact is, there's no NPC, and if they don't come on this flight, then they've got to have 2 weeks hard quarantining. So it makes more sense for them to come with us. So I'm sure that scenario might change in 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll just have to react and adapt to that.
And last one from me, just as that situation is as it is today, are you on the assumption that you only have one window to bring guys in to Queensland to do that 2 weeks hard quarantine? Or would you be able to bring people in individually?
At the moment, we're working on the assumption we can bring them in individually, but they still have to do 2 weeks hard quarantine. And so, we're going to have to tally up government regulations, quarantine rules between the two countries, and also, when the player's actually able to come, because there's quite a few things there out of our control. And we've got people who are monitoring that situation closely, and we'll try to get the perfect balance. Ideally, we'd be bringing a group over together, but I'm not sure it's going to line up like that.
I guess the situation as it is with Richie not going and Beauden going, it's got to give you a good chance to give him a crack, a good chance for him to have a crack, good chance for you to kind of have a good look at him at 10, because he hasn't started a lot there for the All Blacks. I think by my count, he's only had one start at 10 over the last 3 seasons. So just speak to that, Fozzie, please.
Yeah, well, we always knew Richie was going to miss a couple of tests around this time. I was actually really pleased with Bodie off the bench at Eden Park. I thought he looked to me like he's in really good form. He's training well behind the scenes. So, clearly, it's been Einstein to know there's a nice window of time for him now, and that's great. But he's been hanging out for an opportunity. But what I love about him is he's been contributing heavily behind the scenes in the role he's been given. So in some ways for him, not a lot changes, but clearly he's going to have a nice little window of time to really get back into the saddle.